Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to objectively map out the timeline, the root causes, and the really profound aftermath of the tragic May 18, 2026 shooting at the Islamic Center of San Diego. We're relying entirely on curated source materials, things like police operational logs and official investigative reports, to break down exactly what happened that day, how the perpetrators were radicalized, and how this event fundamentally shifted community security. To make sense of it all, we've broken this down into 5 key areas: anatomy of an attack, the heroes of May 18, pathways of digital radicalization, a new security precedent, and finally, civic pluralism and healing. So let's jump in. Starting with Section 1, Anatomy of an Attack, where we'll trace the San Diego Police Department's operational log. Now, when you look at this timeline, it perfectly illustrates the terrifyingly rapid escalation of this threat. We're talking about a massive shift from a routine missing juvenile call to a mass casualty event in just over 2 hours. At 9:42 a.m., a mother calls 911. Her 17-year-old son is missing, he's suicidal, dressed in camo, and a firearm is gone. Pretty concerning, right? But it was initially processed as a standard runaway. Then, about an hour later, she calls back. She's found a suicide note, hateful writings, and realizes more weapons are missing. SDPD immediately bumps this to a priority 1 threat at 10:50 a.m. But tragically, at 11:42, the shooters arrived at the mosque. By 12:03 p.m., literally 21 minutes later, the suspects were found deceased in their vehicle a few blocks away, right after a brief drive-by shooting that targeted a landscaper. So what actually happened on the ground during those chaotic minutes? Let's look at the tactical assault. The mosque actually houses the Bright Horizon Academy, and when the shooters pulled up, a security guard immediately engaged them right there in the parking lot. He took fire, but crucially, he managed to radio in a lockdown. Because he did that, teachers were able to secure 140 young children inside. The shooters did manage to get into the facility, but thanks to the lockdown, they only found empty rooms. Realizing they couldn't get to anyone inside, they went back out to the parking lot where 2 incredibly brave congregants deliberately distracted them. They basically lured the threat entirely away from the school before the shooters finally fled the scene. That brings us to Section 2, the heroes of May 18, honoring the victims who saved lives. We really need to pause and focus on the profound human cost here and the sheer courage of 3 men who sacrificed everything. First is Amin Abdullah. He was 51, the center's security guard. The reports show he acted without hesitation under extreme fire. He confronted these heavily armed teenagers, returned fire, actually striking one of them, and most importantly, he bought the teachers the time they needed to lock those kids away safely. He was killed in this exchange, but his rapid response was literally the first line of defense. Then there's Mansour Kaziha, beautifully known to his community as Abu Ez. He was 78 years old, a founding elder, and the caretaker who had been there since the 1980s. When those shooters stepped back out of the building, Kaziha, along with another congregant, actively distracted them. He gave his own life to pull that threat away from the sanctuary and those lockdown classrooms. And Nadir Awad, he was a 57-year-old neighbor. His wife was actually a kindergarten teacher inside the school at the time. When he heard the gunfire, he didn't hide. He left the safety of his house and ran straight toward the danger. Witnesses say he helped divert people who were just arriving at the mosque and worked right alongside Kaziha to confront the attackers. He directly sacrificed his life to protect his community. And the vital takeaway here is that law enforcement officially credits these 3 men with stopping a much larger massacre. San Diego Police Chief Spot Wall said it perfectly in his press briefing. He stated their actions, without a doubt, delayed, distracted, and ultimately deterred these 2 from gaining access to the greater areas of the mosque, where as many as 140 kids were. It really puts into perspective the incredible impact of human courage. Moving on to Section 3, Pathways of Digital Radicalization. Let's look inside the suspects' extremist ideologies without glamorizing them in any way. So, who were these attackers? 2 teenagers, 17 and 18 years old, who met online. They cooked up their worldview inside this incredibly toxic, hybrid echo chamber that the FBI calls nihilistic violent extremism. This is a scary, growing trend where attackers don't just stick to one hate group anymore. It's this bizarre mashup of white supremacist accelerationism, which is all about trying to trigger societal collapse through violence, mixed with intense anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and militant misogyny. You can see this chaotic cocktail of hate perfectly mapped out in their 75-page manifesto titled The New Crusade. They blamed Jewish people for global issues, they literally called minority populations bioweapons, which is just wild, and they tied heavily into misogynist incel culture. They also went out of their way to glorify previous mass killers, specifically idolizing the Christchurch Mosque shooter Brenton Tarrant and the Isla Vista shooter Elliot Rodger. It proves that modern digital hate doesn't stay in a single lane.
But here's what might be the most chilling detail from the sources. They designed this attack for the internet. They structure the whole thing as a coordinated digital media event. They even ran test streams beforehand to make sure their broadcast would work. Their ultimate goal was to go viral. They live-streamed a 10-minute video of the violence, specifically targeting a dark online subculture known as the true crime community, spaces that actually encourage and cheer on copycat attacks.
Section 4, a new security precedent. Let's discuss the shifting reality for houses of worship. This event is a really grim historical milestone. The Center for Strategic and International Studies points out that while mosques have definitely dealt with arson and vandalism, this San Diego attack is the first ideologically motivated lethal attack on a U.S. mosque this century. This sets a very dangerous precedent. It signals a major escalation, sadly aligning the domestic terror threat level for Muslim communities with what we've already seen at targeted churches and synagogues nationwide. In direct response to that shifting threat, California Governor Gavin Newsom stepped in with a massive security investment. We're talking $80 million. The state awarded this grant money to 343 nonprofits and faith-based groups to pay for hard security upgrades, things like reinforced doors, alarm systems, and surveillance cameras to try and protect these vulnerable spaces. But as you can imagine, this creates a really agonizing dilemma for faith leaders. On one hand, you have this urgent, undeniable need for hardened security, active guards, reinforced gates. But on the other hand, you have the fundamental religious mandate of these spaces. They are supposed to be open, accessible, welcoming sanctuaries for neighbors and congregants. It's a heartbreaking balancing act between turning your community center into a literal fortress and keeping everyone inside safe. Finally, Section 5, Civic Pluralism and Healing, looking at community resilience after a tragedy like this. The immediate response from the city was all about unwavering solidarity. Mayor Todd Gloria put it bluntly, hate has no home in San Diego, and an attack on any one of our communities is an attack on all of us. The sources highlight this as a really crucial point, recognizing that violence against the Muslim community damages the entire social fabric of a diverse city. We're all connected in this. And the people of San Diego really lived up to those words. Thousands of residents from all different faiths showed up. They gathered for an interfaith vigil at a local park and then again for the Janazah funeral prayer. Groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations emphasize that this kind of cross-community solidarity isn't just nice to see, it's a vital form of protection. Showing up for each other is the exact opposite of the division these shooters were trying to create. They truly transformed their grief into a powerful display of unity. Which brings us to the final takeaway for this explainer, and I want to leave you with this thought. We know that $80 million for reinforced doors and cameras might stop a bullet. But as physical security hardens, how do we build the cultural bridges to stop the radicalization before it even starts? Digital hate is mutating so fast, as we've seen today. To really protect our communities moving forward, actively teaching civic pluralism and genuine human connection might be just as crucial as putting locks on our doors. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this really complex and important topic.